everybody to today's webinar. Please welcome today's host, Priya Sachdev, Chief Customer Officer here at Vengreso.
Welcome, everyone. So excited to be your host for today's Modern Sales Mastery webinar. 3 appointment setting strategies that will rock your world. So a jam-packed couple of minutes, 45 minutes to be exact. Together, we're going to talk about great content, look at how you can drive more meetings and build your pipeline for 2022. So let's get this started. Let's talk more about this. And before we go there, just quick housekeeping. At the bottom of the video, you can see a Q&A button. So keep sending us your questions and we will answer the questions live or at the end of the talk, depending on how we can fit them in, but do keep the questions coming in. And also there is a chat button and I can see we are already chatting there. So let's keep chatting, keep putting in your comments, engagements. And if you can't find the QA button, go ahead, put your questions in there too, and we'll pick them up from there, right? So let's get started. We've got a global team from New Zealand to South Africa to California is what I picked up before we got started. Let me now tell you what are we going to be talking about. So today's session really focused on 3 questions and really 3 important ones if you ask me. First one, what are the do's and don'ts of sales automation? We are seeing technology come in and talking about the sales tech stack. Let's talk more about should we not automate stuff? Then we're going to spend time on talking about the second point, which is to say, how can you personalize your sales messages to get buyers to lean in and say yes? How do we stay human in automation? Important one to talk about, right? And what is the proven formula to ask for sales referrals? So let's get started. And to find answers to these questions, let me welcome our speakers today. Handpicked, coming straight from the field. So lots of experience right here in this webinar today. Allow me to introduce first, Rashmi Vishwanath. I hope I got your name right there, Rashmi. The Director of Growth at Apollo IO. Rashmi is coming here with a lot of experience of sales development. And at Apollo IO, she has built the SDR team from ground up. She's an expert developing and managing sales pipeline, creating programs and campaigns, and has the experience of working across the spectrum with small, medium, and large companies. Companies like Lead Genius, DoorDash, Intercom, and Tipality. Welcome to the webinar, Rashmi.
Thank you, Priya. I'm really glad to be here.
And then we have Mario Martinez Jr., the CEO of Vengreso. Mario is the CEO and founder of Vengreso, spent 97 consecutive quarters in B2B sales and sales leadership. In 2021, he earned the #1 spot in the top 10 most influential business leaders by Beyond Magazine, and has been selected as one of the 20 sales influencers invited to appear at the Salesforce.com documentary film, The Story of Sales. Mario is also the host of the popular Modern Selling podcast. Welcome to the webinar, Mario.
Priya, I couldn't be more excited to be here with all of you guys and with Rashmi. We're going to have a fantastic show today. So let's have some fun. Thanks for that welcome too.
All right. So let's get rolling. And I'm going to first start from the first topic. What is sales automation and what are some key benefits of using it? Rashmi, do you want to share your viewpoint on this one as we start rolling into the content?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think everyone will agree that sales is something that really requires you to keep your hands in the game. It's such an activity-focused function that some of the biggest challenges for salespeople is how to keep on top of everything they've got. So one of the really key advantages that we have is sales automation. And for such an activity-centric role, where you have a lot of balls in the air at the same time, even a superwoman or a superman cannot keep everything organized and clicking like clockwork all the time. And if you are, what you should be thinking about is scale. So I think that sales automation is something that can prove key in basically elevating anything that's working for you and scaling it up so that, you know, the impact of it isn't just at a one person level, but across the org. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of sales automation and using it.
Absolutely. I think especially for follow-ups, I think that's where sales automation really helps bringing it back on the radar so you don't drop it. Mario, what's your take on that one?
Great question, and love what you mentioned there, Rashmi. So a couple of different things I want people thinking about in terms of sales automation. It could be something as basic as a tool that you use to be able to send out emails on a recurring basis. It could also be automation based upon using text expansion type tools like Fly Message as an example, where you have preset messages, you're going to respond to somebody and you're going to type out a short code or a snippet and then the whole message pops up. It could be as complex as well as having an entire cadence that is built out, starting with a phone call, being able to find those phone numbers, like from Apollo as an example with good data, apollo.io actually. And also it could have embedded inside their social engagement, like connecting on LinkedIn or sending LinkedIn email messages. And part of that cadence could include email messages as well as video messaging as well. And to Rashmi's point, I think one of the things we need to think about in terms of sales automation is there is no silver bullet. There is no magic formula. There's no magic wand that anybody can wave to be able to miraculously start booking appointments just by clicking one button and having a series of things happen. That's never going to happen. And if it does happen, all of us in sales development, business development, and account executives are out of a job because now we've just outsourced our work to a bot. Right. And so sales automation, what I think is very important is while it is a category, it is a technology layer, there has to be something that goes right on top of it. And that's the human brain, right? It's what we are thinking and doing based upon the data. For example, if I'm going to engage with this person and it's like my 6th touch point, I've got a couple emails that went out and I know my buyer has actually clicked on 3 articles that are all related to X, not the ones that are related to Y. Well, my brain is going to tell me that when I go engage with this person through social, as an example, or create a video, that I'm going to gravitate towards the content by which that individual is most interested in. So sales automation must accompany the human brain. And the benefits are to exactly what Rashmi said. We can't remember all the things that we need to do. Tasks, next step, what did I do beforehand? And so sales automation really has helped a seller, but it's also hurt a seller as well. And we'll talk more about that later on.
Absolutely. And I always keep saying, I don't worry about artificial intelligence as much as I worry about human stupidity. And I'm not just, not just trying to put people down, but it's important to automate stuff, but that doesn't mean we've outsourced everything we need to do, right? We're still working hard. And I'm going to put you on the spot on the next one, Mario. I think this is one thing that you've seen working with so many clients that you have. What are some of the things that you see people do wrong when they talk about automation?
Great question. So let's talk about the organization and some of the things that they do wrong. And I'll start with the first thing that I think most organizations do wrong when setting up automation is they don't have data integrity. This is extremely important that if you're listening in, you're a sales rep or you're a sales leader, one of the things that you should be demanding as this data comes in, you've got a list of prospects that you're going to start targeting, right? It's your buyer persona, it's X number of people, it's a certain title, it's within a specific industry, it may even be in a specific territory. But you don't have a data team that is responsible for validating that data. Let me give you an example, Priya. Anytime that a message comes into my inbox that says, hey, I love what you've been doing at Vengreso /prospectbetter.sell more, I know with 100% certainty that that person did automation. Because there only is one place in the world that we have our tagline associated with our company name, and that's on the LinkedIn company page. So somebody went through and scraped that, right? One of our other customers, if you're selling to like a big, large organization, as an example, one of our largest customers, a large technology organization, a hardware organization, the chief sales officer has a dot, a period in front of their first name on LinkedIn. So it's .Marcus. Every single time he receives an email and it says .Marcus, he knows with 100% certainty that the sales rep who's calling on him did not use their brain. And this is one of the biggest problems that I think organizations have, is the inability to validate and look at the data. Another great example is marketing does this all the time. We do a big giant webinar, someone has put in their name and they put a dot for the first name as an example. Well, marketing goes and they upload that list and it says, "Dear A dot." And then the sales rep does their automation and their sales sequence. And before they hit go, they don't inspect what they should expect, which is a human wants to be called by their first name. You wouldn't say, "Hey, dear A dot," in person. So you would never do that online. Yeah. Right. And that's really important that we understand that. And I think that data component is extremely important. So if you're a sales leader and you're listening in, you should walk away and say, who in our organization is validating the data? Secondarily, you should be looking at before my sales rep hits the go button on a whole giant sales sequence, did they at any point use our brain and say, let me inspect these names? One of the tools that are out there that we've used before allows you to be able to group together 50 people at a time, not 100, not 1,000, not 10,000. Well, why do you group 50 people at a time before you start a sequence? Because the company wants you, that particular provider wants you to be able to look at what do the names say? And it's easy to be able to comb through 50. It's too hard to comb through 100. So I think what we need to make sure is to the best of our ability is figure out those unique opportunities where we can super personalize and or customize. And that's what most reps don't do, is they don't validate the data before hitting go.
Yeah. Important one. Rashmi, do you have any comments on just that point?
Yeah, I think what Mario said, I kind of agree 100-fold, because if you're appearing inept in your prospect's eyes, there's nothing that's more damaging than that. You've kind of lost the battle before you've even started. What I would add to that is, like Mario said, the human brain is a big component. And I would actually add to that and say that a big part of doing automation right is in investing enough planning and setups. This is where the human brain comes in upfront. So you spend all this time, like Mario said, doing the data validation, and then making sure you have your desired outcomes outlined. What is the outcome that you want when you take on a project like this, and then prepare, whether it's creating very detailed personas with exclusion and inclusion criteria, making sure that anybody who you're going to put into a sequence really does belong there. The last thing you want is to pop up an irrelevant message to someone who doesn't care about what you're talking about. And then the messaging should be carefully prepped out. Your field mappings, your contact and account stages, they should be checked out properly so that you can, trigger follow-ups. And of course, make sure that your exclusions are properly also prepped out. So just some basic in between, in the beginning preparation will set you up to avoid these snafus and make the path smoother. I would also add a small thing. I've seen some, when it comes to personalization, there's some automation that you can even add on that front. And I've seen some companies do this. For example, Square, one of the clients that I've worked with, was using personalization in their campaign. And they actually did the research to fill out a field that they were reaching out to restaurants, and they filled out a field that mentioned the favorite, like the most popular menu item of the restaurant. And so when the Square SDRs were getting meetings with the restaurants, they mentioned the most popular menu item with a custom field, well mapped out, data validated in the subject line. And that led to a huge percentage of open rates, much higher open rates, much higher meeting booked rates, but a simple thing right up front using the brain and good preparation. So yeah.
Great point. Mario, you wanted to add something to that?
Love what Rashmi just said, and I think this is super important, actually. One of the things that I hear commonly from account executives and SDRs as well, who are responsible for prospecting, this is all of you out there that are listening in, is you don't have enough time. And so one of the things that we need to think about is, as a sales leader, we don't want to create fools with a tool, right? A fool with the tool is still a fool. Right. And so if you're actually going to be engage something through automation, that is going to save you a certain amount of time and not having to do what we call hand-to-hand combat. Look at the email, construct it for that individual, send it out, right? That's going to save you approximately 10 to 15 minutes per individual. So really what you want to do is as a sales rep, account executive, SDR, BDR, you want to look at, okay, I'm going to save this amount of time here, but now I need to come over here to, like what Rashmi said, look, if you don't have anybody validating your data at the company, then you better validate yourself. And it doesn't take but more than 30 minutes to an hour to look at a series of 100 people and make sure that we've got the right name inside there. And I'll give you an example. Actually, I'm running a specific campaign and a project for me as a CEO and working with other CEOs to have a conversation around fundraising. And so I started a campaign, and Rashmi nailed it with looking at something very unique. She talked about the menu item for restaurants. Well, I had our data team go out and find the latest article that company or CEO was mentioned in. We used that as a custom property, and that title got pulled into the actual message. And what do you know? I had a 61% open rate, a 20% click-through rate. Now, most sales reps are like, they would die for that. And marketing would punch you in the face because that's what they're looking for. They don't get those types of results. But when you do exactly what Rashmi said, and you think creatively about how to engage that particular buyer, even with automation, and put the extra hour it takes to prepare and plan, you're not going to go wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Rashmi, back to you. You spoke about automation, and I'm thinking, there are so many channels in our engagement strategy today, right? So how does a multi-channel engagement strategy benefit the seller and the buyer both?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a changed world now. I mean, after our stint with a pandemic and huge changes in the world, people are engaging with each other in all kinds of channels. Our attention spans are not just living in our inboxes. That's basically the place that we make sure that we're on top of our business communication. And of course, it's a proven channel in that you will reach, your target persona there. But apart from being an accepted, great standard for business communication, it also has like a really strong ecosystem for automation, instrumentation, like we just talked about, etc. But a lot of other channels are not very far behind. We're seeing some great improvements in phone and in social, because people are spending more of their time like on their phones. They're connecting with each other through social media. So making sure that you reinforce your presence, your genuine intent to connect on channels more than just email, basically helps you stand out as a person who has some serious interest to connect with your buyer. And your buyer, who's probably getting slammed with hundreds of emails a day, is kind of spared from having to sift through all the text. Sometimes not everybody is paying attention to text and like parsing through that, and their preferred mode of communication might be more visual or might be more auditory. So definitely leveraging video, making sure you're giving a phone touch, connecting with someone on social media, so that especially if you have common connections, validating that, and validating your presence and genuineness and reach outs. These are all good ways to stand out in the eyes of your buyer, and also introduce yourself in more than just like the one channel that everybody has. So, yeah.
Sorry, Mario, your take on that point?
Totally agree. Our job as sellers and sales leaders has gotten harder today in this era. right? We have to think about every one of our buyers and prospects. If we line them up, if you line up 100 buyers and you said, what's your preferred method of communication? Social, email, text, video, phone call, or don't events, and don't call me at all. You're going to get 100 different answers, right? Everybody likes something different. We've got customers today that if I text between 5 and 8 p.m., I'll get a response. But if I email, no response. If I actually send an email to a buyer, they prefer not to communicate that way and they want to do it over social media. So what I think some of these sales engagement and automation tools will nail it is if they're actually tracking where is this buyer actually most commonly engaging at, and they're using that as AI in the back-end engine, right? As of all these sales reps are engaging with this one particular IT buyer as an example, and you can see that they respond to an email message, but this one is 10 times to a text message and 15 times to a phone call. Well, you should serve up as part of the automation what is the right method or best method, and I think that'll be a very cool feature to add to sales engagement technology. With that in mind, all we have to do is to track this as a seller is simply ask our sales operations and enablement team to put a property into our CRM and look at what's the most effective way to be able to engage with this buyer. Most of our buyers, I pretty much know if I text within minutes, they're responding back. Most of our prospects, if I make a phone call, they're not answering, right? So we've got to find a different way. And the omni-channel is a critical element to your strategy. You must be looking at phone. You must look at email. You must look at using video. You must look at using text message. You must look at doing gift marketing or direct mail. You must look at events, virtual or live. So those are 6 channels right there that we have to think about. And what I challenge all the sales leaders to think about is more is not better. Laser focus on who and what you want to go after with an omni-channel approach is the better option.
I just want to add to that, especially because, when you have multiple channels, you should absolutely be using all of them, but also making sure that every person who's working on an account, whether it's SDRs, AMs, marketing, you guys all have your eyes on all of the data and what messaging is going out from what channel, because this can also flip the other way around, where someone feels over messaged or they feel like repeated targeted if you're not careful, and if you've not, again, going back to the beginning, not done your setups right, and if you're not continuously like across functions knowing what the other hand is doing, that can not go that great. So keeping your information transparent across the organization and making sure you're checking that and leveraging it in your customer communication is a good practice.
Yeah. And I think that's the other side of talking about the omni-channel strategy is something, and I know Mario and I talk about this very often. It's one of our favorite topics, if not our rant all the while. What are the benefits of leveraging hyper-personalization in outreach? Mario, do you want to comment on that one? Because we talk about it literally almost every day when we're working with our sales teams, for sure.
Yeah.
Hyper-personalization there.
Yeah, the name of the game, if you want to cut through the noise, everyone listening in, if you want to cut through the noise, you got to figure out a way to hyper-personalize. Rashmi gave you some great ideas with the restaurant. I gave you one with the articles, pulling in the latest article as an example. I want you to write this down if you're taking notes, right? To be interesting, you must be interested. To be interesting, you must be interested. And I'll give you a very specific example of one of our sellers in their preparation for outreach to a specific buyer. They looked at this person's LinkedIn profile and they went back to posts that were about 4 months old, as a matter of fact, 4 months old. And that particular buyer had wrote a random post, tied it into business, but opened up the line with essentially, growing up, I grew up on Star Trek and Star Wars, and I'm a sci-fi geek, and then he continued on to talk about blah, 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 blah in the business application. So in the opening email to that particular buyer, the seller specifically mentioned being a sci-fi geek, loving Star Wars, and wrote just a sentence about Star Wars as from that perspective. And then, of course, had all the other content that was corresponded to it. The buyer actually responded back and said nothing at all about what we wanted to accomplish, and just said one question: how did you know I was a sci-fi geek? And the seller responded back and actually couldn't figure out where he found that information at. And so in a session, he and I were talking, and I said, well, you must have found it somewhere. Like, let's look on LinkedIn. And we went back, and he's like, oh my God, it was on the LinkedIn profile. And I'm like, bro, you should have put that into the CRM to say, like, this was the correlation. So he responded back with, hey, 4 months ago, you posted this. Buyer responded back with, I don't know what you do. I don't actually really know if I could even use your service, but just because you took the time to get to know me, I'm going to host a meeting with you. And actually a opportunity entered into the funnel. So that's what we mean by hyper personalization, is really looking for a way to be able to engage. And if you can't personalize to the individual, then you need to figure out how to personalize to the persona. And when we say the personalize to the persona is, I want all of you to write down this question. Can I answer what unique business problem I solve for my buyer? Now, most of sales reps, when I ask that particular question, they start talking about their unique feature and their product and how awesome it is. That's not what the buyer cares about. The buyer persona, if you don't have any hyper personalization, you need to figure out is answering the question, what do they care about in terms of the business problem you solve? Example, Vengreso, we help sales teams and sales reps create more sales conversations and grow the sales pipeline through digital sales training. That's the business problem. If you don't have a pipeline problem, if you don't have a meeting problem, I don't want to talk to you. And you don't want to talk to me. So I think that's super important, as you understand how to personalize to the individual. And if you can't, personalize to the persona.
Yeah. And I think this is where that whole combination of how do we get personalization and automation kind of come in our worlds together, right? And before we go on and talk about this, and I'm going to come back to you, Rashmi, with this one. Do you, Felipe, want to roll up the commercial? And then we pick the question up again. Thank you, Felipe. So back to you, Rashmi. Give us some tips on how do we combine personalization and automation and bring out the best of both worlds?
Yeah. This is a huge passion topic for me, because I'm a believer that to really earn somebody's attention and their time, that personalization is a key component. But also I'm a believer that, technology is at our fingertips, and if we're not using it to our fullest advantage, we're missing out. So at Apollo, for example, we're a product-led company. So what we do is kind of like, let people use us for free and position a lot of our value up front. But where the personalization and automation aspect comes in is we also are able to talk to even our free users based on all the things they can do with the product that they haven't explored yet, or some of the wins that they've already got in the product. So we actually use automation to trigger actions that reach out to people when they've taken steps in our product that indicate to us that, oh, they're ready for the next step, that they're a habit user now, or they're a advanced user. And that's something that's helped us enormously. Another thing I think is really key is automation helps you with timing. Timing is a key component when when you're activating your sales cycle, and make sure that if you have your setups correctly, you're appearing in front of your prospects at the right time. For example, we have an automated sequence that fires off within 1 week of a trial getting created, making sure that we ask our users whether they want a deeper intro, whether they want a meeting. There's another example that we've done where even if somebody's not been super active themselves and they have created the account, but a user who's not the main creator of the account, but has been checking something out, we reach back to the oldest user of the account. And then we basically also filter based on, do they fit the persona? And then very often when we let them know, hey, your team's using Apollo, do you want to check us out a little more? They're surprised very pleasantly, and it's one of our highest converting sequences. So I think that personalization with automation really depends on the strength of your logic, and the practices in your rule sets that make sure that you have your safeguards to protect your recipients from over messaging and oversaturation. So that upfront research to make sure that your lists are well prepared, the message is very well aligned, that there's a logic that makes the recipient understand why they're being communicated with, is something that'll take you very far in results.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you talk about that in terms of the logic of the flow, and I think this is where it becomes important, especially for sales leaders, to pull out that data on time to time and do the analysis around it as well, right? So
yeah, I just saw Mario's question about whether it's triggered by automation or sales sequences. Marketing automation has its own flow, but we have sales sequences also. Like we have territories assigned to each sales rep, and when a certain action is performed by a target account, we have sequences prepared that fire off from the account manager who's assigned that target account list, introducing themselves at relevant behavior points, so to speak. So very often people in a very deep product environment just wish that they have that person to answer their questions. That's when you want to get in front of your buyer or your prospect and be that person who can answer their questions. And then that's the time where you can also explore in their mind, what are their pains, what do they need, what are they going to use this for in their organization, what are they really trying to solve? And those bigger conversations happen when you're in front of your prospect at the right time. And that's basically what we're trying to bubble up here.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think timing and logic are the two big takeaways there. Mario, one thing that we've been talking about a lot, and a lot of our clients have also seen great results, is using videos for personalization. And so what is, in your view, the role of personalized videos when we're talking about engaging with buyers?
Great question. And actually there's one in the Q&A, which is asks the question, how do you personalize a cold message when the intent is to find the decision maker? So actually I'm going to do a twofer on this one and talk about personalized videos when engaging with buyers. So first off, We are, if you think about the role of a salesperson, when we make a phone call, it's using 1 sense for the buyer, right? It's audio. When you use a email, it's using 1 sense, that's sight. When you actually create a video, you're actually utilizing initially 1 sense to see that there's a thumbnail, and that's the thumbnail that comes into their particular email. But once it plays, now you're using actually 2 senses. And our goal as sellers is to be able to really get that buyer to engage back with us. And video is a super powerful way to be able to combine personalization. And there's some great tools that are out there, like Hippo Video as an example, or OneMob, that will actually, when you send a video, put the background of the customer's website as an example. And even just that alone allows that buyer to be like, okay, like they took the time to personalize this to me, and they know who I am and the company that I work for. And the other thing too is when you're putting together that particular cold message, here's some best practice tips on video as an example for that cold message to the individual that asked that question. First off, you're looking at no more than 2 to 3 sentences at most. 2 to 3 sentences at most that introduces the video. You always want to make sure that you specify the number of seconds that video is, and it should be less than 1 minute long in that those first prospecting videos. Bad things start to happen after 1 minute. You start to have significant drop off, roughly between 20 and 40%. So if you really want to have a nice sweet video, it's going to be between that 30 and 50 seconds, excuse me. And then for subject lines, you want to be thinking about things that are very unique and specific. The data that we have researched, and Apollo may have something different, but the data that we've researched is 1 to 2 word subject lines are the best subject lines that are going to get the best returns, right? And you need to use something that is going to pull that person in and be able to trigger them to engage with that piece of content. So personalized videos, absolutely. Think of the auditory and visual component. And also, one last tip on the videos. Most reps that we see whenever I receive a video, I have this big giant play button nose. It's the play button sitting right over my face. All you have to do is reposition yourself with a nice wave. So allow yourself to make sure that you're not losing that visual with the play button sitting over your nose.
I want to just answer okay. So I just want to add to that answer for a cold message for that was asked. I actually think that you should just put it in the message itself that you're looking for the decision maker. Very often, being very upfront about that is helpful, but just sort of explain what's the pain point you solve in a very clear way so that your person knows how to position you internally.
Thanks for that one, Rashmi. I think we're always struggling for how do we get in there? I think we've seen data telling us prospecting is the hardest part of sales. I think sellers feel the pain and the sales leaders feel that pain as well. So let's kind of bring this together and talk about how can we solve for this pain of prospecting by asking for referrals. And I know all of us who've been in sales have really, really mined our network to get in front of the people we want to get to. So Rashmi, do you want to talk about what is a good sales referral strategy from your experience?
Yeah. Look, referrals are basically a good way to use your relationships to sort of reduce the friction so that you can just get a foot in the door, like to give you a chance for an appointment. So the ask there should be very clear that it is just that chance. So when you're asking for any referral, you should be 100% confident that the company and account is qualified and the person who you're asking the referral feels the pain point that your solution really solves. So if these two things are a strong match, the referrer who you're going to reach out with, that could be basically all the connections you have within your organizations, your investors, your advisors, your mentors, your peers. You reach out to them, and it should be very clear why this will be valuable to the target person, the prospect, and sharing a good, strong, like tight snippet about exactly what value that person will gain is going to be key. If you even include a small, well-worded description so that your referrer can grasp and understand it quickly, maybe even use it as a blurb if they do choose to refer you, rather than come up with their own words, you'll be sparing them that much of time and work. And most importantly, I think this is the key component. your referrer should feel that when they refer you, they rise in the eyes of the person who they're referring you to. Like they should be feeling that they've contributed value to this other person by making the introduction to you. And it should strengthen the relationship between the person making the referral and the person receiving this referral, that is you. So another last point is to make sure that you update the person who referred you once the conversation has been concluded, so that they have that satisfaction of knowing their action helped on your behalf, helped you, or at least got your foot in the door. So closing that loop is also a strengthening action in this whole relationship building cycle.
Yeah. And we always, and I think Mario already shared some resources for that as well, are talking about how to get referrals in our programs. Mario, your a few bits to that referral magic that we talk about.
How many seconds do I have here, Priya? Is this 30 seconds or 60? Felipe,
we'll give you 60.
60 seconds. All right, let me tell you real fast. So I did put a resource in there for referrals. We ran out of time, but I'm sure Rashmi and I agree that we can spend a whole entire webinar on just the referral strategy alone. Love the tips that she provided. One of the things that I want you to take note of, if you're a sales leader or sales rep, the very first step in our prospecting cadence that we have is the look for the sales referral. Now, this is really challenging for new reps, SDRs and BDRs that are relatively new, within 0 to 5 years worth of experience. But if you have a tool like LinkedIn Sales Navigator within the enterprise, or there's another sales AI tool that's out there called Connect the Dots, these tools allow you to be able to look at not just your network, but you're looking at the global network of everybody in the company. And so what I want to encourage sales leaders to think about is one of the number one things that you can do to be able to explode your future pipeline is ensure that your sales reps have a connected network, and that everybody is connecting to every single buyer, because you're only 1 or 2 people removed away from getting into the next person's office. So if you can see the collective network of your company and say, if I'm calling on Priya as an example, and I see that Rashmi is connected to Priya, I'm going to ask Rashmi, who is my coworker, to get Priya to make the introduction for me. And that's really important. So build a connected network. It's super important that sales leaders, you walk away, write this down, and you say, we must ensure that we are building a connected network, because that's the strategy to be able to drive the future referral, of which has a 60% meeting rate. So it is super powerful, and it should be the first step before you engage in automation.
Oh, absolutely. And this has been such an interesting conversation. And thank you, Mario, for sticking to the 60 seconds there. So I know we're just coming up on time, and I've really found value in this conversation. I've already made my notes. I'm sure other people have. Sales automation, talking about the fact that there is no magic formula, but preparation is critical. How do you ensure you get your logics in there? How do you ensure your field labels are all clean? And the most important one there, data integrity. Who's looking at that data? Who's cleaning it up? Who's accountable for that? So very critical, I think, when we start talking about automation. The second one I'm taking away from here is really what Rashmi spoke about, right? How do we get automation and personalization together? And I think looking for those behaviors, I think she used the word of habit user, picking up those cues and tying up the actions to the cues is also very, very important. And last but not the least, referrals. It's been my way of going and getting some new introductions and getting opportunities on the table always for the past 30 years. So thank you so much, Rashmi and Mario, for this conversation. Any last couple of words before we roll up our commercial?
Prospect better, sell more.
Absolutely. And we just have a question come in, if you want to take that absolute last one before we go. What is the best way to bring your research into automated sequences so it's scalable?
Custom fields that are well defined and standard formatted so that they can fit into a snippet in the right context, in the right template.
Absolutely. And I think that last bit is so important, custom fields, but then ensuring that they are formatted right. And that's the thing we all need to remember. It is technology. It speaks to the field only if it's exactly the same. Hope you found your answer there. Thank you so much, Rashmi, for your time and sharing all that wisdom with us today. Thank you, Mario, once again, for bringing in life, energy, and the wisdom to this webinar. Back to you, Felipe, for rolling up the commercial.
We're not sweating our numbers. We're not struggling to prospect or find customers. We're not even sweating into quarter because we're growing a foundation of A-level sales talent. We're rethinking successful habits, and we're rethinking our entire digital prospecting strategy. We're going to break records and explode our sales funnel. We're doing things differently, and we're doing things better than before, because this program showed us how to not only excel at sales, but how to become a prospecting master.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Please follow us on our Vengreso page. Stay connected for the Modern Sales Mastery Show, which goes live every Thursday. So please do join us. If you follow us on our page on LinkedIn, we will keep sending you updates on that one. Also, the Modern Selling Podcast with Mario, always a great asset for people to look at, and check us out on vengreso.com while we keep having this conversation. Thank you so much for your time today, and hoping to stay connected with all of you on LinkedIn as well. Have a great day.